YouTube Ozzico, the Goat House is back. After another wild week in the NFL, I'm here with my takeaways for those games like I am every Monday. We got this video. We got weekly picks and a lot more as well. We got some offseason videos rolling out, more to come. It's kind of that time of the year. I mean, coach is already getting fired. Just a couple hours ago, Nathaniel Hackett was fired. So interesting stuff. We got you covered with things like that on our Twitter. It's on your screen. There's also a link pinned in the comments. Also, our sponsor links are down there as well. GLD Shop, Liquid IV, code GOAT. I think they got some deals going on, at least in the GLD Shop still, as Christmas passed here. So check it out. Starting with that Thursday game, Jaguars and the Jets. The Jaguars keep on rolling. The only negative, if I had a negative for the Jaguars, can't have too many because they are rolling. They've taken over the AFC South. It's still going to come down to that last game. But if I had to, find a negative here, I thought they could have scored more points. They played so well that score should show more than 19. So when you play the better teams, you want to make sure you can execute those, get those points. So that's really the only thing. But Trevor Lawrence, he started with a fumble. He's been fumbling the ball a bit. He's been unfortunate, too, because he's lost a lot of his fumbles. I think 8 out of 10 he's actually lost. Like once the player fumbles, it's really luck, or getting lucky or unlucky. So you can't put the ball on the ground. So that's the most important thing, not how many they lost. But Trevor Lawrence played fan. He started heating up. He started heating up a couple drives in. I think when the game was already 3-3, yeah. And using his legs, and that's where he's dangerous because he's one of those guys. Those are the types of guys that are taking over the NFL. The guys that can move, but they're strong enough to break sacks. They're smart enough to know when to move, when to start scrambling, when to run, when to throw on the run. But the guys that are the best in football are still pass-first guys before that, and that's where Trevor Lawrence, falls into play there. So that's fantastic. I still can't believe people wanted to base everything off of what he did last year. He's going to be he already is a special quarterback. He's going to be a very special quarterback, and I've been on that train here. So I think everyone really should have been. But Doug Peterson's been fantastic, especially down the stretch for the Jaguars. Defense has been great. We talked about them being a sneaky team going this year, but a sneaky defense. And you see in a game like this, I know they did play Zach Wilson, but you see the plays they made against the Cowboys as well. Rayshon Jenkins has been fantastic. The corner's been playing well. They stopped the run. They take that away first. The linebackers are playing great. 2 new additions to that group too. The Jets, Zach Wilson was awful. I don't really care that it was raining. He was pretty bad. And this is pretty much the end of the era of him being a starting quarterback. Perhaps, somebody asked me like after this game that night, like, where is Wilson going to go? Did the Jets try to trade him for something very little? And the only team I really thought of, and I'm not saying this is what's going to happen or this is the number one most likely landing spot, but the only team that popped in my head really was, and I can argue against myself here, but the 49ers, because they were going to, they liked Zach Wilson a lot in that draft class, but they had the 3rd pick, not the 2nd, and looks like Shanahan might be some sort of QB whisperer over there. So do they, could they, this is like hypothetical, scenario that's probably not going to happen, but could they trade a late pick for Wilson, have him battle out with Purdy and Lance going forward? That would be pretty wild there, maybe to fix him a bit. Because the talent showed at BYU, but there's just too many things that it almost looks unfixable. You can kind of put a Band-Aid over it, make it look a little bit better, but just too many issues there. Some of these balls he was throwing when he had guys open, he was just kind of throwing it up for grabs. I know it was raining, but I don't know. Some of those throws I've never seen really quarterbacks do that many times within a game. I don't know. It's pretty rough. Just really couldn't get anything going. I like the coaching staff of the Jets. I don't like what they did with Wilson and Mike White. It almost felt like, because when Wilson came out, they were like, Salah was like, we still plan on seeing him this year. And all of a sudden, Mike White's hurt. Mike White's saying that, he's most definitely going to play. All of a sudden, he can't. He's getting different opinions from doctors because he feels like he can play. And then they roll with Wilson again on this game. And it felt like they were in a position where, like, we got to see. We put him on the bench. We let him think about what he's done. We let him learn a little bit more maybe. Let's throw him in there and finally officially see, what he can do. And I think they costed themselves some games. Now they're going to go back to Mike White. And, maybe they knew, like, hey, we're a good team. We can make the playoffs, but are we really going to go win a Super Bowl? Maybe they don't have too much confidence, which actually is a problem for some teams, having too much confidence. But Mike White's coming back in. They actually could make the playoffs. The Jags, it'll come down to the Titans the last game of the year, and the Titans are rough right now, but they might be a little healthier then, so that actually could be an interesting game. I would think it could get flexed to Sunday Night Football. We'll see. Jags keep rolling. They could have a lot more. They should have a lot more wins. They're able to close out games now, though. Bills and Bears, kind of a weird game. Kind of a weird game looking at the Bills, but looking at the Bears, it's kind of like, how do the Bears keep doing this? The Bears keep having, they against pretty, any team, really, but some good teams, they have moments, portions of a game where it's like the Bears are going to win this game, and they just don't. But in this one was a little different. They ended up getting their ass beat when it felt like they could or should win throughout a portion of this game. And that is kind of an issue. I know, everyone's kind of like, the Bears are going to get a good draft pick, and that's great, too. But they're going to get a good draft pick. It's kind of whatever, but you'd like to see that coaching staff and some of the key players in that team that are going to be around for the future, that they aren't really going to replace with the draft picks or the money that they have, the cap space they have. You want to see those guys be able to clutch up and close out games or execute when you have the opportunity. I mean, they were getting great field position because Josh Allen was playing a pretty bad game. The Bears defense played better the last couple weeks because it looked like the worst football before that. I know the Bills ended up scoring 35 points, but the Bills are really struggling early in this game, and it's just you can't really get anything off anything, so that's a little bit of a problem. But I do imagine the Bears team, I won't say will look a lot different next year. It'll definitely look different. I think give it 2 years, it'll probably look a lot different. So that could definitely change some things. But to the Bills, yeah, it's a weird game because they start a little slow. And Josh Allen was pretty sloppy in this game. They weren't great in this game, but they won 35-13. I know they played the Bears, but they still won 35-13. So the bad is, why are you so sloppy? This is kind of Bills weather. It's also considered Bears weather. It was in Chicago, but that cold weather, it's playoff weather. You're supposed to be able to play a little bit better. What happens if you're that sloppy against good teams? Not good. Josh Allen he's very, very, very good. One of the best players in football, but hasn't been as good as I thought he would be, but the Bills kind of had these portions of the season the last couple of years, so maybe they're getting it out of the way now and they're still winning, and they're going to be hot in the playoff time because it does feel like, I think Bills fans maybe know what I'm talking about. I think the last couple of years they did, but really last year, remember that game they lost to the Jags, but there's a portion inside the season, that they, struggle a little bit, and all of a sudden they're back and they're playing even better than ever. So maybe it's kind of coming at a better time here, perhaps. We'll see. But they end up getting the job done. They were very sketchy stopping the run against the Dolphins last week. I thought they were lucky the Dolphins kind of didn't run the ball more or in crucial situations. And the start of this game looked like the Bears were running pretty well. Not actually Fields, but more so the running backs, Montgomery. But it didn't last too long. The Bills adjusted, but they had a really good game plan for Fields. They contained him. They took that kind of that crazy run ability away from him, and they kind of made him sit in the pocket and throw. And the Bears even got good field position, and they weren't really able to do it. So they kind of do rely on that Fields run a little bit. Which they're going to have to work some things, to be able to close out games in the future. They're going to have to figure out, how to adjust a little bit better. So maybe the Bills just outcoached them by quite a bit, which really shouldn't be too much of a surprise. But yeah, nothing really else on that game. Saints and Browns. This is a game the Browns should win. Going into it and then how it was playing out as well. This is a game the Browns should win. They should be a lot better than what they are. I know it's kind of a weird season, and Watson kind of gets, for that being out of football for that long, kind of get thrown back in there, but he's got to be better. Is it a, cold weather thing? I wouldn't think so. I think he'd be fine in the cold weather, but because is it still a rust thing, or is it too much kind of going on up here, with everything, distractions? I wouldn't think so, but maybe, what is it? We can't really judge it, I guess, until next year. But yeah, it's a game they should figure out of the win. Saints pretty beat up. If I'm not mistaken, I think the Browns are fairly healthy compared to. No one's really healthy, but there's a lot of teams that are insanely beat up. So the Saints put Jarvis Landry on the IR going on the last week. They've been beat up. Andy Dalton didn't throw too many times in this game. Threw for like 92 or so yards. At the top of my head, it was somewhere in 90 plus. Kamara, I executed, made big plays when he needed to. It's not like he went crazy, though. He had a big game. It's not like he went crazy. I know Taysom Hill had some good moments as well. One for a touchdown when the Browns couldn't tackle him. But the Saints didn't really do a whole lot on offense. I guess mainly a defensive game. But the Saints coming from New Orleans, playing inside, coming up to Cleveland in this playoff weather and this is Browns weather here. And for the Browns to, start off 10-0 and not really being able to get much going here, it's just not good. It's a big win for the Saints. I keep saying it's kind of like stings a little bit. I'm not a Saints fan, but I kind of put myself in the shoes of the Saints or Saints fans. Like that Bucs loss has got to hurt so bad because they would be in a really good situation if they won that. But much needed to win there, and they clutch up, figure out how to pull it off. They did adjust. So be curious to see what they do with Dennis Allen in that situation. Will Sean Payton come back? Will they have to trade? Will they trade him somewhere? So that's kind of already thinking about that. But the Browns, I haven't been thrilled about Stefanski for some time. There's been specific games they lost. Like, what happened? Why couldn't they close it out? And I could find specific things like maybe they didn't stick to the run, or they ran too much, or or didn't focus on Chubb enough. Usually, what it was. This game, there really wasn't any of that. Where they kind of laid off something or someone, but I think it's just they got predictable and there was no adjustments, and that's kind of that offense, that Stefanski offense, that West Coast style offense. But there's some coaches that do it right. It's really different. I know Shanahan kind of runs that offense, but it's his own take on it. It's different. So it just becomes pretty predictable. You rely on that offense on too much of the play caller getting unique or staying fresh, and over time it kind of goes downhill. I've been saying this for years, and that's why I didn't really love the hire. But so maybe time to move on from Stefanski. Maybe here. And could the Browns end up with a guy like Sean Payton? Do they have what it takes to trade for? That's a different discussion. But I think a pretty good roster. I know it's tough because that's why Stefanski might get a pass, because Watson's been out. For a portion of this year, but I think it's just too good of a roster, and he's been underwhelming as well. So it's just like, hey, we made this big move for us to make it work. We gotta get the right guy in here. I didn't really like. I kind of said that was the only thing I didn't really love about Watson with the Browns is I kind of question, does he fit the Stefanski offense? Because usually those types of offenses, the play caller are more of the guy. He's more of the guy. I've said this before, it's a little hard to explain, but he's more of the guy rather than the quarterback. The best offense in football, the quarterback's got to be the guy, but you kind of rely on the certain play calls being unpredictable, the adjustments in that type of offense. So I don't know, maybe it's time to move on over there. But big win for the Saints. Texans and Titans. The Titans lost 5 in a row. It's crazy. It's bad over there. I know they might be the most beat up team in football. I know a lot of teams do have injuries. It's just part of football, but they do have a lot. But you got to find a way still, in my opinion. And they had an opportunity to win this game, and they couldn't find a way. Malik Willis was pretty rough. Man, it's tough. It's so you can't really judge the guy or put a label on him yet. But there are some things that kind of sit in the back of your mind. It's like, because a lot of things look like it's up here with him, where maybe thinking too much, hesitating too much. I think sometimes he forgets he's an incredible runner. Little panicky maybe. And, how many good quarterbacks were like that in the beginning? Not many. Definitely no great ones. The great ones that were bad early on, not too many of those. Josh Allen, too much confidence, like a little too much, no hesitation, so almost the opposite. But yeah, so that's a little tough. And the Titans got an interesting decision with Tannehill this offseason. Do they try to trade him? So it's a weird situation. The Titans were on the top of that division for some time, and it's starting to kind of slip away a little bit. And the Texans were able to clutch up and get a win. They're in risk of maybe losing that first overall pick. I don't think they will, but it's actually possible because the Bears play the Lions and the Vikings. The Texans, so the Bears been losing like crazy, so they got to lose those. And the Texans got to win both. And first I'm thinking it's unlikely. They play the Jags this week. Jags are rolling, but the Jags game means nothing for the Jags. Same, for the Titans too. And they play each other last game. That's the only thing that matters, that last game of the year. So the Jags rest guys. The Texans already beat them once too. Not that it really matters because they're different ball teams right now. And then they play the Colts, which we know could go either way. So do the Texans get the second pick? Do the Bears get the first pick? I still say unlikely, but it's pretty possible. There, which changes everything, because then they can't really get the quarterback they're choosing. Not that I think the Bears would take him, but I think somebody trades up maybe for a king's ransom. That's going to be interesting. We're already talking about a lot of offseason stuff, but it's kind of like that for most of the league. Not It's ridiculous. I mean, it's not ridiculous because I guess we do it all every year, but it's crazy that's how it happens. So many fans just end up at our offseason mode, free agency draft. I guess it makes it more interesting. But Texans pull off the win. Just Titans extremely disappointing. Just turnovers. Malik Willis. Henry's been fumbling a little bit more in crucial situations. Like he dominated against the Jags, but maybe that kind of kick-started things in that game with those turnovers. And then he had that bad fumble on a good run in this game too. But I think it was more so the quarterback play and just missing so many damn guys. The offensive line. The Titans might have the worst offensive line in football right now. I think the metrics won't really show that because that'll put everything from the season, together. But I'd say if you ask me who has the very worst offensive line in football right now, I'd probably have to think longer about it. It's something that's just popped in my head right now. Probably the Titans. So it's beat up. Seahawks and Chiefs, I don't have a whole lot in this game either. I thought the Seahawks would do a little bit more on offense. This is supposed to be a shootout game. I guess, pretty cold out there. First time these teams are playing, and it's the coldest since they played this year. I think the cold usually happens earlier. It's weird. Like it happens a lot earlier across the NFL where it's like teams, it's as new and it's a sloppy week that week, but they kind of get used to it. It felt like, and there's been some cold games here and there, but this felt like that first week across the board here, league wide, that it was kind of like that. So I guess that would be why a little bit less scoring than expected. And the Chiefs were capable of scoring more. Maybe they just kind of focus on the clock there. They played incredible defense. That pass rush is better than I think people give them credit for of the Chiefs. They made some big plays in the red zone, taking the ball away. I think the secondary is underrated as well. I mean, they're not the best in the league at all, but they got some tough guys that play real tough. Seahawks, yeah, it's tough. I mean, they're a portion of the season they looked really, really good, and then they kind of went downhill. Geno's kind of, I don't want to say coming back down to earth, because he's still a lot better than what we expected or what he has been in the past, but he's definitely not playing at nearly as well recently. Was it a cold thing? Is it a pressure thing? I don't really think so, and I'm not really talking about pass rush pressure, but big games down the end of the year in playoff weather, could it be that? Offensive line kind of coming back down to earth a little bit as well. So it's a little weird that they couldn't do a little more on offense. So they moved the ball a little bit more than the 10 points, but yeah, that was pretty tough. So the Chiefs take care of business. I thought that 10 spread was a lot, and the Chiefs ended up winning by 14. So Seahawks on offense is very underwhelming. And they got some help too. If they would have won, that would have been pretty big. And this goes for a lot of other teams too, because the opposite. The Seahawks lost to help some other teams. Other teams lost to help the Seahawks. Somebody had to execute this week. I guess the Packers did. Just tough one for the Seahawks there. And they don't have the easiest of games coming too. The Jets was in a free one. Giants and Vikings, I predicted 26-24, 1 point off. I remember that. I almost went 27, but I did not. But the Vikings, so kind of what we expected there, kind of a wild game, classic Vikings game here. The Giants kind of having some games like this year as well. Really the difference in this one, the Giants turned the ball over. The Vikings didn't. And the blocked punt, the Giants had a punt blocked by the Vikings kind of late in the game. That was huge. Those were the kind of the big moments in this game. And the Vikings playmakers took off, and talking about playmakers, Saquon Barkley was an absolute playmaker as well in this game. But the Vikings playmakers kind of took off. I mean, looking at Justin Jefferson, I thought Dalvin Cook was pretty big early in this game. We'll kind of circle back to that. But TJ Hawkinson, Jefferson and Hawkinson were unbelievable. Fourth quarter Cousins was unbelievable as well. But the Vikings, it kind of goes into the playmakers making plays, but they just made clutch plays. You look at the third downs in this game. They scored to Hawkinson on an incredible touchdown catch. It was a third down. I look at the 2 third downs at the end of the game, though. They were about to go 3 and out and give the Giants the ball back, and the Giants just scored 8 points to tie the game when it was almost feeling over. And Cousins and Jefferson linked up on an incredible play for some good yards on third down. Now they're kind of focused on, we got to run some clock, but we want to get the first down as well. So they're kind of throwing screens, but they have a third down screen to Jefferson, which is blocked well, better than the other ones with the Giants executed on. And that goes for big yards, but still a long field goal, 61-yard field goal. Fully was not expecting Greg Joseph to make that because he doesn't have the biggest leg. That kick would show otherwise because that was probably good from like 64, give or take. But I was going to that kick. I'm like, this is either going to, almost a miss was almost the best case for the Vikings in a way. Like, is this going to be blocked or is it going to be returned because you have the strongest leg? I was actually mainly thinking that. And he made it with ease. So credit to Greg Joseph, who's been clutch this year, actually. He's missed some crucial kicks, extra points, but at the end of games, he's actually closed it out pretty well. So the Vikings take care of business. They did control most of this game. I did think they outplayed the Giants. So I did think they deserved to win. It just was interesting once again. This could be a playoff rematch in a few weeks. So I was kind of thinking, what if they play it again? It'd be in Minnesota. And I was kind of thinking both ways here. Like, the Giants turned the ball over and had a blocked punt, which was crucial. The Vikings didn't. So if they played again, would the Giants take care of the ball? And they still almost won this game. And then it would be a little tougher for the Vikings. And I was thinking the Vikings, though, if they would have ran Dalvin Cook a lot more, I actually think they would have closed this game out when they had leads. I know the pass looked fantastic, and it is fantastic, but the Giants can't really stop the run, and Cook started off pretty damn well. Either they could have ran more clock and not. They were up 10-0 at one point, and it felt like they were going to close it out late. Will they do that more? They kind of been saving that, or is it just they don't want to run? We'll have to wait and see, I guess, and what O'Connell has up his sleeves there. But it could be an interesting rematch in the playoffs. I thought Daniel Jones was all right. I thought he played a pretty good game. The interception really wasn't on him. I thought Hodgins was fantastic, but I thought he could have fought for that ball a little bit better. Saquon was great. Had that late touchdown run, which was fantastic. A lot of blitzes in this game from both sides. A lot of blitzes. So that was, I guess, pretty entertaining as well. The Vikings close out another one. Big game against the Packers next week. Bengals and Patriots. The Bengals dominated the first half of this game. They absolutely dominated it. We know that I talk about it all the time. The Bengals dominate man coverage. We know the Patriots run as much man coverage as anyone. We knew they were probably going to come in and run man coverage. It's what they do. It's what they live and die by. So the Bengals were just dicing that up. It was pretty easy for them. Burrow was sensational. These receivers were going to work as well. Defense was going to work. Patriots couldn't do much. Felt like the game was going to be an absolute ass beating, but then the Patriots go crazy. I had some clutch, wild plays. Talk about that 3rd and long, then I'm going for a touchdown that got tipped around. But they made some wild plays, and Burrow was starting to go downhill a little bit, throwing some interceptions. He still overall played a great game, but what happened is the Patriots adjusted a little bit in the second half. I think we're used to the Bengals adjusting, but Bengals, you can't really blame them. Like, it's just working so well. We kind of know what the Patriots are going to do, but they made some adjustments and threw them off a little bit. Maybe some trap coverages there to make them think they're still in man, or so it was some good adjustments by Belichick and the Patriots there in the second half. Missed extra point was pretty brutal. More brutal was that fumble late, which I don't really know what the rule is in that situation, because all of a sudden out of nowhere, a couple years ago, they started with that forward progress, blowing the whistle. I guess they always been doing that, but I guess a few years ago they started with it blowing the whistle after the turnover already happened, and that shouldn't be. If the fumble happened and there was no whistle blown, then it's a fumble. So technically they got the call right because they didn't blow the whistle. But I do think a whistle probably should have been blown. The plays that it's blown for, or even after the turnover, and you're not going to do that one. Like, he was moving backwards. It was all defense versus Stevenson. So I was a little surprised that they didn't blow that whistle there. That kind of lasted a little too long. Stevenson still has to hang on to the ball there, obviously. So that was very costly. So the Patriots, it actually felt like we're going to win this game for a second, and they didn't have the opportunity to tie it because of that missed extra point. So that's why I said that was kind of brutal. But Bengals outplayed them so hard in the first half that, I guess that's what helped them hold on. But the adjustments were interesting. So the Bengals, can they close out when they play better teams that adjust? What's going to happen? So I guess the question's there. They do rely a lot on, and they can still play good against anyone because they have Joe Burrow. They have these weapons. They're so talented, but they do kind of rely on specific things, playing against, I don't want to say rely, because again, they can play very well against other coverages, but they are much better against specific types of teams and coverages there. So that is interesting. And they lost La'el Collins, too, so that was pretty tough. But Lions and Panthers, the Panthers just dominated the Lions. I mean, it's pretty early, and it kind of was over since then. I mean, they jammed the ball down their throats. And I said that was during the picks video, I almost talked myself into switching to the Panthers, like during the video. So I usually argue both sides, what I always like to do. I almost convinced myself, and that kind of happens sometimes where I'm like, oh, man. But because the Panthers ground game, and a lot of people saying the Lions have been great stopping the run. I'm like, yeah, they've been playing a lot better defense. They've been playing a little bit better against the run. But then the Panthers kind of debunked that. They still show that they put some things on tape here for other teams. You can still pound the football against that defense. And I kind of looked back at who they were playing and what was happening in those games. And you kind of see why. I'd say, teams that aren't run first teams that don't live and die by pounding the football, maybe minus the Giants, but that game got so out of hand early because the Lions, they did a great job. They kind of just by default took the run game away. So I don't know if the run defense really, if we look at it, was it actually better? Statistically, yes, but was it actually better? Probably not now that we see. So I do think, that's kind of the key there, but the Lions are capable of getting up early with their offense on some teams to maybe take away that run game. So that is key. So you are relying on some things. But the Panthers, the running backs went crazy. Over 100 yards. Guys averaging double-digit yard per carry, and one guy 7 whatever yards. So that running back group, it's kind of a three-headed monster right now too. So at least the two. But yeah, they went wild in this game, and Darnold played pretty well. They didn't need a whole lot from him, and he played pretty well. Defense played well. Lions offense got going late. What do we have? That botched fumble. That was crucial early. The Lions were moving, and the Panthers end up going by Goff, and then the Panthers end up getting down the field and scoring again and extending their lead. I thought that was a big moment, huge moment in the game. But you kind of can feel it early. If you watch this game, maybe maybe not everyone agrees, but I felt like you can feel it pretty damn early. Even the Lions tied it up pretty quick, but there was kind of a feeling I got. Maybe no one else, but it was kind of a feeling I got, just what was going on, and just the Lions, Dan Campbell, like physicality is kind of the what he preaches, and being the tougher team. And the Lions a lot of time are very tough, very fit, being the more physical team. The Panthers out physicaled them. They are way tougher. That's what the Panthers are. Believe it or not, the Panthers are one of the more physical teams in football. Maybe the most. They're up there. So maybe that's what beats the Lions. For sure. So we'll see. But that 37 points. Yeah, that could have been a big win for the Lions as well. That was a big win for the Panthers, but that could have been a big win for the Lions. So it's a tough loss, but a lot of other teams did lose, so I guess it wasn't the end of the world, I suppose. But they got to take care of business the rest of the way. I do think, playing the Bears, who are just losing like crazy this week, and then the Packers game could end up being a good draw if they lose. It looked like a pretty good draw going into this week because they just had to lose once, and they're probably going to play their backups against the Lions the last game. But if the Packers beat the Vikings, they're gaining momentum. They're going all out, so that'll be interesting. Falcons and Ravens, another one of these games from these teams where it's, not a whole lot of offense, a lot of running the football, a lot of defense. But is it a lot of defense because the defenses are good or because the offenses are not? It's a little bit of both, but I think more so that second part there, unfortunately. But the Falcons, even though they got down early and the Ravens did look like they had control, that's probably why I didn't catch as much of this game as some of the other ones, or maybe all the other ones. It's because it felt like, the Falcons really going to score. The Ravens got this, even if they're not scoring much. But the Falcons started going a little bit. And really, what it was in this game was, two things. Getting field goals instead of touchdowns. Goes without saying, it's pretty obvious. Like, if they would have converted for some touchdowns there, if they would have converted in the red zone, been better in the red zone, play calling better, plays better. Ritter didn't play all that terrible. Even close to that, but then they could have won this game. But then you have that fourth down towards the end of the game there, and it's tough because a run didn't look right there. It didn't feel right, like a low percentage. You got to actually, I'm more of a believer. It's tough because you are a run first team, and they weren't running all that bad in this game. It's just tough. I think the Ravens in that situation are going to buckle down, and they're going to do what they've been doing for the last how many years, is stopping the run in crucial situations. I'm more of a fan in those situations. I'm a fan of running the ball in general. You got to run the ball. It's got to be part of your game. But in those situations where you absolutely have to get the ball in the end zone, I'm more of a fan of getting the ball in the end zone. Putting the ball in the end zone to have a shot. Not going backwards a little bit to get the ball to progress that many yards on your only last shot. So don't love the play call. I just kind of argued and understood why it was called, though, I suppose, but that was tough. Falcons had a legit shot to come back, have a chance to tie, maybe even win this game because they left some points up on the field. The Ravens defense has been clutch. I do think it's been, I do think it's been better against the not so good offenses, though. I do think it's good. But last time they played the Jags, they let the defense was really struggling late in that game. So how are they going to be? They clinched the playoffs and the Falcons are out. But how are the Ravens going to be against the better teams, the better offensive teams? But they should get better with getting healthier, getting Lamar Jackson back. So, interesting team to watch there. Commanders and Niners, a weird game because it was kind of all defense early. It was 7-7 at halftime, and I felt like the Commanders were a little unfortunate. Maybe the 49ers were a little fortunate that the Commanders were not leading at halftime, just kind of what went on. But the 49ers clutched up. They got a goal line stand early. That was a massive moment in that game. So I thought the Commanders actually overall moved the ball better than the Niners. Niners' only touchdown was Ray McLeod. The Commanders had some, the 49ers figured out some offense, and they scored 37 on a really good defense. That's awesome. That's amazing. The Commanders it wasn't many plays they slipped up on, but believe it or not, 37 points, and they basically scored on defense to the Niners. But when they slipped up bad. The broken Ray McLeod play, the George Kittle plays was kind of reminding me of the Seahawks games too. Like he's just getting wide open. So, and again, credit the Niners for that. But the Commanders, get up 37 points is pretty wild. But, yeah, they just kind of slipped up in just some bad moments, and that's tough. And they just didn't really, at the end of the day, they just didn't have enough in the quarterback position, which has kind of been the story. Carson Wentz comes in, throws a really good ball. But, again, is he going to be the answer? Who's going to be the starting quarterback next week? Just not enough from that quarterback play. And the Niners, played incredible defense when they needed to, clutched up. Bosa chasing that defensive player of the year. Jimmy Ward making plays. Shanahan looking like a god once again. The second half adjustments, further into this game. Obviously, it's a defensive game. Hey, let's turn it around. I see some things against this good defense. They're doing a really good job stopping the run. They got maybe our best players kind of locked up a little bit, but we can take Kittle, who's kind of that mismatch problem because you don't know if he's blocking or pass catching. And we can find some things to kind of scheme him open and help out this offense in general. And they did a really good job adjusting. They won the adjusting battle for sure in this game. So that was a big storyline there. Commanders, playing the Giants two times in the last how many weeks? I've been calling for them to run the football. A lot more in this game. They come out and they run it more, but they're just playing a really, really good run defense, so they couldn't really get anything going. I mean, Robinson averaged 2 yards per carry. So credit to 49ers run defense, so they kind of just had to rely on the quarterback, and there just wasn't enough there. And that's kind of the story of this game. The Niners have been rolling. They look really good. Really good. Eagles, this was a really good game. Eagles and Cowboys. Felt like the Eagles had this one for a bit. We'll talk about them, but a few plays that really changed this game or created the end result in this game, but the one massive one was that 3rd and 30. I mean, clutch play by Dak Prescott, dropping that in there to T.Y. Hilton. Clutch, absolutely clutch, big-time play. I don't know how the Eagles give that up, though. You cannot give that up. And then after that, Deron Bland gets a clutch interception. Miles Sanders fumbles as well. Those are kind of the plays, like all in a certain time frame there that created the end result of this game with the Cowboys clutching up, making plays. I'm surprised at the bad defense in this game. The Cowboys defense actually looked like the best in football through a portion of this season. And the Niners kind of overtook it, but it was like the Cowboys are still really good. Just the Niners are better. They're better. But the Cowboys defense kind of going downhill. I know they've had their injuries for sure, but and going against Gardner Minshew too. And Josh Sweat did have a pick 6, amazing play by him early in this game. Dak's been pretty sloppy with the ball, but he's also been super clutch. How clutch he was towards the end of this game, which is massive, obviously. But the Eagles' defense, too. The Eagles' defense we consider good. Like, they got the pass rush. They got the playmakers. We consider this a good defense, but there are weeks where they slip up. Not many weeks, but there are weeks when they slip up, and it looks bad. It looks really bad. And they've actually won a lot of those games because the offense has looked really, really questionable there. I even throw the Texans game out there, even though they didn't give up a whole lot of points. They ended up creating some turnovers, but I even put like the Packers game, but they ended up winning those games. So this one, the defense struggled. Minshew can't turn the ball over as many times as he did. Miles Sanders can't turn the ball over. Minshew did turn the ball over a lot, but Deron Bland interception was just a really good play, I think. But so it's not really all on Minshew. You can't turn the ball over like that. Again, not just him, Miles Sanders, but the defense just struggled quite a bit as well. And it felt like they had it. It really felt like they did. The Cowboys clutched up, obviously. just that 3rd and 30. If that 3rd and 30 play doesn't happen, what's the final score of this game? But then you add on the Bland interception, the Sanders fumble, which came not too long after that. Just massive, massive plays here. So Dak's been, he's been either insanely clutch or like wow plays, or he has some turnovers, which I guess isn't that surprising. But yeah, I think he has like 12 interceptions though with the amount of games he played. That's not great, but it's weird because like he normally doesn't do as much of that, but he's always made clutch plays. But I think some of these clutch plays he's making this year might be up there with his best in his career. So what's going to happen in the playoffs? He didn't really take enough chances in that playoff game last year. He's missing some throws. I think he was being a little safe most of that game. So we'll see what happens this year. Wow game though. Raiders Steelers was that Saturday night game actually, and it's just kind of a classic Raiders game. Getting shut out or getting scoring a little bit more, getting close to shut out in the second half. And the game went to halftime, and I'm thinking it. I was thinking it. I think I said it out loud to somebody else watching the game with, and I'm sure a lot of you did the same thing. Like, they may not score another point. They may, somebody I was talking to said 17. They're going to finish with 17, and that's probably not going to be enough. They didn't actually, and that's a good prediction too, because that was very, very likely as well. But they didn't score any points, and they lost the game there. So 10 points, not going to cut it. The adjustments just have not been there because this has been consistent. That's a bad thing. Consistency is usually a good thing. Consistently have not been able to adjust and get points in the second half and blowing games, and it goes back to the adjusting. There's no adjustments from McDaniels. I'm really trying to figure out why or what it is. There are some teams and some coaches that, when things are working, we don't want to change it, and I understand that. I kind of brought it up with the Bengals-Patriots game. It almost wasn't good for the Bengals, but that's the case where you understand it. Like, the Patriots live and die by man coverage. They're probably not going to switch things up. We got to keep doing what we're doing. Understandable at halftime. It's like, hey, let's keep doing what we're doing because we're dominating this game. And the specifics of the matchup. This game's different. The Raiders aren't dominating. And Mike Tomlin is one of the better coaches, adjusters in football. You have to adjust to be unpredictable. You have to try to find a way there. Not all on McDaniels, but because Derek Carr's been playing pretty bad. They couldn't really get Jacobs going in this game either, so nothing was really going for them. Technically, the Steelers were moving the ball, maybe better than the Raiders. I don't know about, at that point of the game, but just not really executing. I still think the Raiders were moving it better earlier in the game, but for sure. But and they only scored once. It was on the last drive of the game. So this year was a little fortunate, but the Raiders just can't really figure it out. How you lose off that. How the Steelers couldn't score a touchdown before that, because the Raiders defense isn't really presenting anything. They have Max Crosby. I think Patrick Graham's a good defensive coordinator. Other than that, and they got some injuries in this game. They're not really presenting anything dominant besides, Max Crosby. But I'm more talking in terms of like units or parts of the defense. So Steelers they got to get more. They got to do better getting the ball in the end zone there. But that last drive was fantastic. Pickett was good. A lot of it was checkdowns, but he took what was open. So you can't blame the guy for that. Can't knock the guy for that. Najee really, turned it up a little bit at the end in the right moment, when he needed to be clutch. So this was a must win for the Steelers, just, for multiple reasons to kind of stay alive, but what it was at stake for that night, what they were playing for. But, Vegas coming to Pittsburgh to play in Steeler weather, first cold game of the year, real cold game of the year, prime time at home, what was at stake, what they're playing for, playing for Franco Harris, you got to win that game. So they cut it a little close there. I was a little disappointed throughout this game, but, the adjustments were made and they clutched up when they needed to. And the defense, shut out in the second half. It just seems like a Raiders thing. It seems like I don't know. It's just being predictable, not adjusting. It's crazy though because like Carr was a good quarterback. He's playing bad right now. He was a good quarterback. I don't know what's going on. They really miss Gruden, I guess, but it's kind of a shame what's happening. And it sounded like a few weeks ago, more than a few weeks, halfway through the year, that they were going to be pretty loyal to McDaniels and they were going to stick that out. But what's happening now? Like you're gonna are you gonna go find another quarterback? Are you gonna find when you have a pretty good one, even though he's struggling right now, you're gonna go with the coach, who didn't work with good players over the to try to force better players. I don't know if you get what I'm getting at here, but it's tough. It's a tough decision coming up here. So it's been a weird year for the Raiders. And the Christmas games, Packers and Dolphins. The Packers clutch up and pull it off, and they're trying to sneak back into the playoffs. It's what they know. It's what they know being in the playoffs. So that's just a clutch win for them. The defense made some clutch plays. Looking at the Packers offense, they didn't do a whole lot really. Rodgers, I thought, made some clutch plays. For sure. I don't know if they did a whole lot though. I guess they did things when they needed to, but it was just the story of the game is what was the difference in the game was Tua's interceptions. And credit to the Packers. I thought Joe Barry did a good job calling this game as well, putting them in kind of tough situations for Tua, kind of confusing him a bit. What the coverages he was calling. And the defense played well, clutched up when they needed to, obviously to end the game as well. But Tua just throwing really as bad at interceptions as you can see, you can find. And that was it. That was it. The Dolphins could have won this game, just by not turning the ball over there or throwing an interception there, But the Packers clutched up, won this game. And I thought the Dolphins got the ball back. And they didn't do much the whole game, but I thought they were going to score. And right away, just throws it to the wrong team there. So, we were all hyped on Tua and McDaniel, but you forget when teams change that, a lot of the time, no matter the team, they're a problem for other teams, for a portion because they just don't really know how to game plan for them. It's all new. And some coaches or some players, come back down to earth after the more film's out and more teams correctly game plan for them. And that's on film. And we might be seeing that here. We might be seeing that, now that teams are starting to adjust for this McDaniel offense and Tua. And, so they played pretty well last week against the Bills, though. So I don't know. I'm not going to say anything for sure here. But, and once again, McDaniel just not running the ball enough. The Packers are actually not good stopping the run. They're actually very good against the pass. And for you only to run, both your running backs got less than 10 carries. Mostert's averaging, 5-point-something yards per carry. Wilson, 4-point-something yards per carry. You're in this game. You're winning this game at times. And your quarterback's not playing well. He's throwing the ball to the other team, and you'd rather have him sit out there and throw the ball to the wrong team more instead of running the football. I get frustrated when coaches when it's pretty damn clear like what they're doing wrong and they can't figure it out during the game. Like it gets pretty frustrating to me. So. So it's questionable. Mike McDaniel, Tua, questionable, so I don't know. Packers, I keep saying it, but just so clutch. And now they play the Vikings and the Lions, and they're both at home while they got fire. I think those are pretty winnable games. They're favored against the Vikings. I can see that game going either way. That's gonna be an interesting one. I think I make sense. The Packers are actually favored, believe it or not. But I thought it was gonna be freezing because it's getting freezing out there. But it sounds like the Vikings might catch a break. It's still gonna be probably cold out there, but it's not gonna be freezing. It's gonna be so that could be an interesting game there. The Dolphins is a tough loss. Patriots and Jets. That Jets game might end up being freaking huge. So they got to figure it out. They're disappointing right now. The next game. Yeah, the Rams scored 51 points. This game was over instantly. I thought this was the toughest game to pick this week. I picked the Rams. I was very scared, though, because the Broncos pass rush versus the Rams offensive line, that is just, depleted is not even the right word. It's like, I don't even know. Half those guys were running on the team for most this year. So that was kind of my worry. But the Rams made that a non-factor. They came out. They were unpredictable. They were fast. They were using Akers well. They were getting Baker, out in space. quick dump offs. Guys were, getting off the ball quick. McVay just looks like a genius for a game like this. And the players played very well. Baker just more time learning the offense. Only a first game starting, actually got to go Monday night to Lambeau, freezing cold. Now you're at home with another week learning the offense. Ends up looking really, really good. Again, Cam Akers had a really good game. And this game was over. And they made plays on defense. I mean, some impressive interceptions to start the game. End up getting all three were impressive. They got on Russ. And Russ, just continues to get worse, it feels like. Those are some bad interceptions and decisions he's making, not running, throwing it there, not reading the coverage, not seeing a guy wide open in the middle of the field, insisting on the sideline, which he's always kind of been a sideline guy. And that's kind of where he's been questionable, even when he's been really good in the middle of the field, either not seeing guys or completing passes. Maybe it has something to do with the height. If some of those guys are like that, I don't know. But at this point, he's just kind of declining. And then the Broncos did fire Hackett a couple hours ago, which kind of needed to be done because the dysfunction of the team. They've got players fighting against other players, but their teammates as well. And just how bad it is, how bland it is. But really, a game like this, Hackett didn't throw those balls to the wrong team and make incorrect reads. That's not me at all saying Hackett shouldn't have been fired. It was pretty clear that he should have been. And it was pretty clear that they, made the wrong choice. And it was clear that a big part of that was going to get Rodgers, and they got their second option. And then they traded away a lot, and they end up giving him a contract before seeing him play off that injury and not playing well last year. So pretty tough there. Anything else I got from this game? The Rams just, 51's ridiculous. They didn't punt once. And just we're dominant. Other thing I had, the Broncos defense, I kind of been saying a little bit. The Broncos defense has been pretty overrated. They're good. It's a good defense. I think it's well coached. But the stats are pretty misleading. They were first in scoring for a while. They're third right now, or I don't know what they are after this game. Probably less than third, but lower than third. But teams that have been playing have kind of been parking the bus a little bit. Like, hey, this team's not scoring on us. We're gonna run clock. We have this game put away. So there are ways to beat that defense. And I don't think it's as good as where people are giving credit for. They only gave up this amount of points, and the defense has put them in position to win. So don't get me wrong, it's a good defense, but they only gave up this many points. I think teams are parking the bus a little bit against them, and they're just kind of focused on the clock a little bit because they have them beat. And the Rams with Baker Mayfield, Cam Akers, those receivers they have, and the offensive line they have, they go out there and drop 51. And I know the interceptions, the offense played a part in that as well. But the Rams exposed the Broncos linebackers in this game. So it was just a genius game plan by McVay. Got those guys one-on-one, got them in space. Even if it was get the ball quick underneath, make them play one-on-one. There's a lot of missed tackles there. So the Broncos, in a game like this, it's like, all right, the defense is good. It could be even better. We need linebackers. We need actual off-ball linebackers. So that kind of showed in this game. Impressive game by the Rams. I'd imagine they keep Baker Mayfield, but or would want to. He'd be the backup to Stafford. Does somebody else sign him? I could just see him sticking with the Rams there, honestly. In the last game, the Buccaneers they've been bad this year. They got some clutch wins though. You look at the Rams game, the Saints game, and this game, the Cardinals game, where it's like they're a little fortunate to win those games. And they were pretty fortunate to win this one, but being able to close out and be clutch at the end, that might have something to do with Tom Brady, even though he's not playing the best football right now, and he was pretty bad for most of this part of this game. And it was a pretty, the Cardinals should have won this game, so not closing it out is pretty rough. I know you have McSorley at quarterback, so it's tough. They are depleted, but you got to find a way to close it out. And that kind of goes back to Kingsbury. It's like, I know you're depleted, so does he have legitimate excuses? Probably, but another game where you couldn't find a way to close it out. And it's going to debate, a big debate on if he's, I think most people say he's going to be fired, but I feel like I'm the only one that ever talks about it. But, one, they extend him this offseason, so does that play a part for them? I know it sounds like Keim's going to be gone, but another one is, that spread offense, that Kyler Murray offense, it's specifically fit around him. There aren't really coaches in the NFL that are going to run that. The coaches that would, there's a shot they're not as good, or they're definitely worse than Kingsbury. The coaches that would run it better than Kingsbury are in college football and getting paid more and loving their job there. And there's not a ton of them that they would fit the description for the NFL, the Arizona Cardinals. So that's the tough part. It actually is a tough decision, but at the end of the day, you got to win football games. You got to figure out how to close games out. There's been some questionable decisions, so and you're more tied up to Kyler Murray now. So it's interesting. To me, and most people are like, it's not interesting. You fire him. And I might be leaning that way. Like, if you can't win, you can't win. You can't find a way, you can't find a way. So I'm kind of leaning that way. I'm just telling you, it is way more complicated with this specific situation than that. So, but I thought James Conner was great. I mean, Fournette and Conner, they're going to have similar games in this game, like running the football, catching the football. I thought Conner was great. The Bucs were like kind of backwards in this game because they averaged the least amount of runs in football at 22.2. And there's been times where it's like, why are you having Brady throw 50-plus times, almost 60 times, and you're not running the football? And I understand they're not very good at running the football, but you still got to find ways to run it more and be unpredictable. You don't want to have Brady drop back pass, and then teams can specifically game plan for the pass. They can pass rush, pretty predictable. But they go from one extreme to another one. Like this game, they decided to run way more than normal. They decided to run like back-to-back-to-back plays, like with the look like the same running play. Turning it over on downs, and you have a crucial 3rd and 3 later in this game, and they end up clutching up and coming back and win, and they ran the ball. You got to get 3 yards. Like, I don't know about that. Some teams, yeah, sure. I think their thought was to go for it on 4th, but were they going to run the same play again if they got, 2.5 yards? I don't know. So it's a little weird, and a lot of people blame Leftwich, and yeah, surely he deserves the blame. Sometimes we don't really know which plays Brady's changing or could change that he doesn't. You would think a guy like Tom Brady has quite a bit of control over that. So maybe, and he's clutch at the end of games. He's fantastic, and he's more involved running the offense because a lot of hurry up, and he's just kind of checking at the line, telling guys what to do. So there is a lot more, and Brady deserves most of the credit at the end of games. But there are times where it's like, Brady didn't have to call that run. We've seen him change plays, or maybe he's calling the run. So I don't know if we fully know, but I do agree that Leftwich has not been great. So, but that's a huge win. Panthers are probably a little bummed about that. The Saints are bummed about that. The Panthers still have an opportunity to take care of business here for sure. They play each other. I saw the Bucs were favored by 5.5. I'd imagine that goes down because of the way the Panthers are playing, the way the Bucs just played even though they won, and then Wirf's dealing with an injury as well. I'd imagine that, but it usually changes by who's betting on who. But I think people will bet on the Panthers, and then it'll go down. And they'll bet on them for those reasons I explained. So it's just random take right there, but I think pretty valid. But that is it for the takeaways for this wild week. We only got 2 more weeks left. Playoffs on the line. We'll have all kinds of videos, maybe some playoff scenarios videos as well. We have off-season videos on the channel, more to come. We got you guys covered, so join us, like, subscribe, turn notifications on. Follow us on Twitter. There's a link pinned in the comments for that. Anything else you're looking for. It's going to do it. Goodbye.